Hey, welcome everybody. Tony Porter, Cards and Dice TV. I wanted to do a video about the use of TOPPS baseball cards in our hobby and why I do it and what is interesting to me about it. First of all, I collected cards as a kid, and I wasn't as comprehensive and as disciplined as maybe I could have been. But as a kid, you're just thrilled, and I was definitely thrilled about the whole thing. I love the colors, I love the action photos, I love the uniforms, I loved all those aspects of card collecting. I love the social aspect of it, where you would flip cards with your neighbor and so on, your neighborhood friend. I was never really good at that. I didn't really know what the rules were, so I always kind of felt like they were kind of, taking advantage of me. So I didn't really do it all that much. I try to avoid it as much as possible and just keep the cards to myself. And I would have a few packs, and maybe I would have a pretty big stack. And ultimately, I don't know what happened to the cards, to be honest with you. My memory's pretty foggy about it. A lot of stuff was going on at that time in my adolescence, so I'm not totally sure. But anyway, 1984 is the season I'm replaying, and the way I'm doing it is I'm replaying 3 to 4, a series or a series plus one, depending on who the next pitcher is, in each month. So I'm getting a flavor for the period, I'm getting a flavor for the team, I'm getting a sense of history, and that's how I wanted to collect the Mets. I wanted to bring all the Mets together just because it adds color, it adds character to the experience. It takes me back. A lot of times I don't visualize the games well. I don't visualize the players, their numbers, their uniforms, their faces, just because it happened so many years ago, and a lot has happened since then. So I kind of bring the game to life using these images. The season sets are the best way to go. Now, I know I bought a team set of the 1970 Mets, representative of the 1969 season. When I was replaying, when I was doing a big, Seaver replay, and I was doing a Mets replay for 69, which never really comes out the way it actually did because there's so many intangibles. You would have to have an intangible rating that is so far and beyond the rating of every other team, the Mets, and it would come into play almost every game because that intangible was what got them to the World Series and got them to win the World Series. They were not the best team, nowhere near the best team. They were the team that basically reached the pinnacle of success in the league, but not necessarily the best team. Now, did they have the best pitcher by far and beyond? Absolutely, no doubt, and he was untouchable the last 2 months of the season. But anyway, so I did buy a season set, and they can get kind of pricey depending, when you're buying it. Like if you're buying, the 50th anniversary of 1969, well, guess what? Everybody's buying the 1969 set. So that sort of thing. But if you're buying a set that nobody's really looking at that moment in time, and you kind of keep your eyes open, you can probably find a good deal. Anyway, you can buy sets from, you can buy cards from $5 to $500, and it's the same card. I don't understand. I'm so ignorant. Okay, it's the same card. I picked up this Whitey Ford. Look at this Whitey Ford. Okay, because I'm replaying. Look at the beautiful back end of that Whitey Ford. Look at that. Gorgeous, gorgeous colors. Gorgeous. It's clean, crisp. I love it. The font is pretty legible because, Anyway, this card, you can get this card in the $800 version, or you can get it in the $8 version. And to me, it looks like the exact same card. It just shows you how little I know about the card collecting art, if you will, or market. All right, so the cards, collections can go from $1,000. The big in-demand seasons can go from $1,000 to, I guess, maybe unlimited amounts. I don't know how money. Some people have so much money it doesn't matter to them. whether they pay $50,000 or $500,000 or $5 million. It's just a drop in the bucket. I don't think the majority of us are that way. So anyway, all right, so I'm going through the last handful of cards to find the last set of Mets, and I see that Tom Seaver's in this one. And it looks like I have a repeat there. So I'll leave that in there. So I'm going through, and I'll pull out a couple of cards. The Mets are going to play the Cards later on tonight. So what did I get so far? I got Dave Rucker, a pitcher, and I got Bruce Sutter, a pitcher. Rucker I remember a little bit. Sutter I remember a lot. So this is through the last, I'm digging through the last handful of cards, just finding the last Mets that I need to complete the team, and then I'll go through the team so you can see. Now this is the 1984 Topps set. I made a mistake and I bought the Fleer set, and then I said, oh, I don't want the Fleer set, I want the Topps set. So then I went back and I bought the Topps set. So I have Fleer and Topps, and I'll show you the Fleer after I do this. So I have one little group of cards that I have to go through, and just to see if I find any more Mets. Or I just threw out a couple of Cardinals. Here's another Cardinal, Joaquin Andujar. He happens to be the starting pitcher in tonight's game, so that worked out perfect. I did not set that up. All right, so what is this? Yep. All right, so I'm done. I'm done going through the whatever 600 or 700 cards. So I've separated all the Mets, and I like to do that. Let me put this aside. So it's going to be Brian Giles. Brian Giles, interesting character. Let's just make a couple of comments on Brian Giles, because he was a good defensive second baseman, but only played 3 seasons with the Mets and disappeared from baseball. His last season was 1983, when he had 400 at-bats, batted that's his slugging percentage. Yeah, he batted .245, stole 17 bases, and played a decent defensive second base, and he disappeared from baseball, never to be seen again. Mystery of Brian Giles. And here we have one of these NL active career strikeout leaders, and guess who that is? Tom Terrific. This 84 set is representative of the 1983 season. I had to learn that the hard way. Craig Swan is still with the Mets. He was their ace for a bunch of years in the late 70s, early 80s. He's still around, and this will be his last season with the Mets, and he also disappears. Pitches with the Mets for 10 seasons. Pretty good friend with Tom Seaver. And he vanishes. I can understand why he gave it up, but he didn't try to come back with anybody else. Interesting. This is Tom Gorman. Tom Gorman bounced around a little bit, and the story. Here's Tom Terrific. After 6 years in Cincinnati, comes back to the Mets finally, and they're not going to lose him again. Wrong. They screw up and they lose him to the White Sox. Embarrassing. Manager Frank Howard. This guy was not, a fatherly type figure to some of the players. He really mishandled and mistreated and kind of shamed Jose Oquendo. There's lots of stories about that if you read about the Mets in that era. Howard was really not a big fan of Jose Oquendo, especially Jose Oquendo went into a slump, and Howard would keep on pulling him, and letting players that were in worse slumps, hit for him. So this really knocked his confidence down. This is Bob Baylor. I remember him as a Toronto Blue Jay. He's still with the Mets. He plays with the Mets in '83. Remember, this is an '84 set, but it represents the players in '83. Kingman plays with the Mets in '83 because they took these pictures in October at the end of the '83 season, and then they called them the '84 Topps release. This is Doug Sisk. He plays with them throughout, I think, '86. So he's around for a while. Carlos Diaz. He gets traded to the Cardinals in '80. I thought he was part of the Hernandez trade. But man, he looks like he's had a hard life. This guy. He's either a hard drinker or a hard partier. All right. So Walt Terrell. He's with the team. Pitches every so often. Mookie Wilson. A leadoff guy that struck out a whole lot. So Tucker Ashford, he's a guy that's up and down and disappears from baseball as well. I think he goes to the Padres for a little while, but never really becomes very much. Ron Hodges, he's with the Mets for many years. Rusty Staub, Le Grand Orange, what a hitter, huh? Amazing hitter. Loved cooking, real sociable guy, very well liked by the people who knew him, but a powerful guy, and hurt his shoulder, and I think that's 70. I think it was the 73 World Series, or was it the 69 World Series? Had a shoulder issue. George Foster, the $10 million bum, he was hated in New York. Just had a terrible personality. Was not liked by the team. In '86, when he didn't come out in a big brawl they had with Cincinnati, George Foster sat in the dugout while everybody else kind of, matched up with somebody. He immediately became a persona non grata in the dugout, and he was released. Hubie Brooks. Hubie Brooks plays a decent third base for the Mets. Jesse Orosco, All-Star. He's got two cards, All-Star card, and he's got his regular card. He was lights out reliever for the Mets. He's in that famous picture in the '86 World Series in the New York newspapers, where he's down on his knees right on the mound with his arms towards the sky. Great picture. Ed Lynch. He was a good friend with Ron Darling, and he was a very likable, sociable guy. Got along with everybody. Mark Bradley. He shows up and quickly vanishes. We have batting and pitching leaders. Tom Seaver with a .355 ERA with the Mets in 1983, and Mookie Wilson batted .276. So if I want to get the '84 season, I have to basically buy the '85 set. Darryl Strawberry, he started in '83. He was called up. Tall, lanky, power-hitting, speedy right fielder for the Mets. Huge expectations, and reached pretty certain heights, and then kind of he was distracted. Did not have the discipline, I think. I think he had the talent, but not the discipline for baseball. Jose Oquendo, he went on to play, I think, with the Cardinals for a bunch of years. I believe it was the Cardinals. Gotta double check that. Junior Ortiz, another one that shows up for the Mets for a short time and quickly vanishes. Jesse Orosco, this is his second card. Mike Torres, and Mike Torres is known for the Yankees, of course, the World Series teams, and then I believe he started off with St. Louis. I believe it was St. Louis. He goes to the Red Sox, and he comes to the Mets. So he's kind of bounces around a little bit. Here's Scott Holman. Don't know too much about Scott Holman. Danny Heap, he provides a very consistent left-handed bat off the bench and fills in against right-handed pitchers. And here he is, B. Keith Hernandez. Now, in the traded set for '84, you're going to have Seaver, you're going to have even Ron Darling comes over to the Mets in '84. I don't have the traded set here, but Keith Hernandez, number 17, 1979, co-MVP with Willie Stargell. Big trade, the Mets acquire him, and that's really going to be the first piece of the puzzle, along with some pitchers and so on. Man, it would have been outstanding for Tom Terrific to have remained. Okay, I did not pull him. All right, there he is. Tom Seaver comes back. He is really the franchise. He'll always be remembered as a Met. You never hear anybody talk to him about his time in Cincinnati, although he was outstanding in Cincinnati. In '84, the season I'm replaying using Replay Classic, which you can tune in and watch. And I do a lot of highlights, and I record stuff, so it's not the whole game all the time, especially if it's kind of a game there's nothing happening. I usually get the highlights and bring them all together. And yeah, Tom Terrific is sensational. So really, and let me show you, some of these sets are amazingly cheap. You can get sets for $10 with shipping another $10. So for $20, you can get a whole season. If there's a season, that is not a highly regarded season, but doesn't mean that it won't be highly regarded in the future. This is the Fleer Mets. Let me show you the Fleer Expos and the Fleer Padres. I played some games with the Padres and the Expos. Here are the Fleer Mets. And you can see them there. Rusty Staub, John Stearns, Craig Swan. This is the '84 Fleer Mets, so this represents the '83 season. So a little bit different. The colors are a little bit different. The approach, The Topps went more with an action style, whereas Fleer went more with some action, but a lot of poses, right? Portrait style, kind of an earlier kind of time period. And here is Tom Terrific. That's his shot from the Fleer set. Dave Kingman, looking scary. So I don't have them all. I don't know what. I probably have them somewhere. I'm missing some players for sure. I gotta just look for them. But anyway, that's the Fleer set. So the Fleer looks a little bit different. You can see that. I really like the Topps set with the action photo and then the close-up shot. And then, of course, the Mets, the team name on the side, and then the player name at the bottom, and then the little Topps logo. So anyway, what does this do for me? What's the purpose of this? It just helps me kind of go back into the history, helps me, visualize, brings back the nostalgia, brings back my time as a kid collecting cards and the excitement, related to collecting anything, It kind of brings all that back to the tabletop, and it just makes me want to learn a little bit more about each player and kind of remember, just like I did. I went through these cards and I remember different stories, so that'll kind of it'll kind of give rise to my knowledge bank of baseball history and of Mets history in 1983, 1984, and so on and so forth. So it just brings players to life. It puts them, it gives you an image, and it brings that image to the tabletop. So it's not only, a card with numbers. This card with numbers represents this player, or what. But, it's not just a card with numbers on it. These cards represent actual living, breathing people that are performing. And here's Darryl Strawberry. So I just saw him a second ago, so we'll put him out there. Now remember, these are the cards here are the 1983 season, whereas the baseball cards are 83 season, whereas my classic cards are the 1984 season. So remember that the Topps always represents the previous year. So this is 84, but this is 84, so I would really need the 85 season. But this is close enough to what he looked like, and there he is, number 18, swinging the bat from the left side. He's a young guy, he's 22 years old, and he's going to make a name for himself, and he's going to hit a ton of home runs, and he's really going to be a force to contend with. So that's what it does. It turns this into an actual picture, and it just gives you, an added dimension to approach our games with, our tabletop games, and just adds depth and adds complexity, adds detail, adds a visual. A visual is so powerful, don't they say that, an image is worth 1,000 words? This is Tony Porter, Cards and Dice TV. This is why I use Topps baseball cards on my tabletop.